Hey everyone, welcome to Banned Truths. Today's story takes us deep into a part of history that was never supposed to survive, and yet, here it is. There are many ways a state can balance its books. Some tax salt, others tax windows. But few in their quest for revenue have dared to gaze downward and declare that the female chest might yield not only milk, but money. Let us journey to 18th century France, where Enlightenment illuminated the salons, but rarely the tax codes, where bureaucrats powdered and perfumed drafted laws with the same detachment one might assign to trimming hedges or rearranging statues. And in the strange twilight between monarchy and revolution, they devised a solution to the country's fiscal woes: a breast tax. Yes, you heard correctly. In a society stratified by class, swollen with privilege, and allergic to direct income tax on the wealthy, the government needed inventive ways to extract coin from the population least able to protest. Thus, the so-called female attributes tax, colloquially known as the breast tax, was born. It was not its official name, of course. Official names wear masks. This one was cloaked in euphemism: a modesty tariff, a public decorum assessment, or simply in some parishes, the surcharge for unsupported features. The logic, if one could call it that, was a peculiar blend of morality and math. Large breasts, it was argued, disrupted public order. They distracted men, provoked envy, tempted priests, and compromised modesty. But more importantly, they were visible, and visibility in the age of surveillance by decree made one taxable. And so in several regions of pre-revolutionary France, inspectors, usually male, invariably smug, were assigned to evaluate the bosoms of women in market stalls, taverns, and occasionally churches. They carried ledgers, quills, and the kind of composure only bureaucracy can bestow upon idiocy. Their task was simple: assess the immodesty risk, assign a numerical grade, and calculate the corresponding tax. The criteria were unscientific, of course, but no less rigid. Factors included the prominence of cleavage, the height of bodice cuts, the likelihood of distraction, and in one infamous parish, the verticality of jiggle. There were measurements taken with lace ribbons, charts drawn in cafes. Satirical pamphlets flew from presses faster than court orders could suppress them. The tax was not universal. Noble women were exempt naturally. Their breasts, swaddled in silk and protected by title, were declared ornamental rather than disruptive. But peasant women, washerwomen, innkeepers, and vendors, they became both spectacle and scapegoat. The financial burden was small per person, but immense in principle. It codified a truth that had long hovered over female bodies like fog over the Seine, that they were public property subject to evaluation, regulation, and exploitation. It wasn't enough to cover oneself. One had to pay for the privilege of being seen. And lest we imagine this as a curious footnote, know this: the revenue was real. Municipal records show significant boosts in local coffers during enforcement periods. The money was used to fund road maintenance guard salaries, and in a glorious twist of irony, morality patrols to fine women who dressed too provocatively, which often meant those who had just paid the breast tax. It was a closed loop of absurdity: pay to exist and then be fined for existing wrong. The women resisted, of course, but subtly. Some bound themselves flatter. Others padded their gowns to confuse the metrics. Rumors spread of herbal teas that could reduce bust size. Itinerant corset makers sold tax shields claiming their garments could suppress visibility below taxable thresholds. A few brave souls protested outright, marching topless in towns as a form of defiance, daring the officials to tax what was now undeniable and paradoxically politically weaponized. And in this strange economy of flesh and finance, one lesson was made crystal clear: a government short on imagination will always find a way to tax the body. To fully understand how breasts became taxable assets, one must appreciate the particular genius of Ancien Regime bureaucracy a system that could simultaneously deny the existence of hunger while meticulously itemizing the curvature of a corset. France, by the mid-1700s, was already a tax labyrinth. There were tariffs on salt, on wine transport, on doors, on chimneys, on hats, and even on buttons in some localities. The nobility naturally bore none of these burdens. They contributed prestige. The clergy paid in blessings. Everyone else paid in coin crops or blood. Into this tangled web arrived the Modesty tariff, a regional tax policy adopted in desperate departments seeking new revenue. Unlike the salt tax, it wasn't nationally codified, but left to the discretion of local officials who, encouraged by an economy in tatters and a court in perpetual debt, interpreted their mandate with galloping creativity. Records from Burgundy, Limousin, and parts of Languedoc show itemized fines for bodily provocation with line entries that boggle modern sensibilities. Madame Duchemin, 2 sous for visible cleavage exceeding thumb width from sternum. René Leboucher surcharge of 5 sous for unsecured motion during cider distribution. Aesthetic regulation morphed into fiscal policy. A miller's wife might pay a fine for leaning over her counter too low. A dairymaid could be cited for distracting posture while milking. The metric was never truly the body itself, but its performance in public space, whether it provoked or simply refused to hide. The enforcement predictably became farce. Inspectors, often chosen from the lowest ranks of local clerks, were issued badges and sashes to lend a sense of ceremony to what was in essence legalized leering. Some wore tape measures. Others claimed to eyeball by instinct. Their presence in markets quickly became a source of satire and disgust, and women devised increasingly ingenious ways to mock them. One anecdote tells of a fishmonger in Nantes who wore an exaggerated wooden breastplate under her dress, inflating her taxable profile to absurd proportions. When fined, she demanded a receipt stating the exact reason, then posted it outside her stall with a sign that read, "Charged by the state for being better built than their morals." Her business flourished, but resistance was not always comic. For many, especially the working poor, these taxes compounded existing burdens. A widow with 2 children already juggling food levies and garment tolls could be crippled by a few extra sous a week. To avoid detection, some adopted double shifts in nighttime labor, cleaning, laundering, caregiving spaces where bodies were invisible and therefore untaxed. Yet even the night held no guarantees. The church, not to be outdone by secular ingenuity, issued sermons warning of the sin of bodily temptation under candlelight linking visible form to eternal consequence. And in this ecclesiastical shadow, breasts became not only taxable but theological. The body was now triply policed by state, by society, by salvation. It is easy from the comfort of modernity to laugh at such systems, to dismiss them as relics of lace and ink absurdity. But what made them endure wasn't merely the absurdity, it was the efficiency. These taxes, despite their grotesque premise, worked. They generated income. They reinforced norms. They reminded women that even their anatomy could not escape the ledger, because taxation is never just about money. It's about message. And this message was clear in a collapsing kingdom. Every surface land labor and limb was a site for extraction. Eventually, as with all systems of overreach, the breast tax collided with something more powerful than bureaucrats' revolution. The 1780s brought famine, debt, and unrest. While court operas still played to gold leaf ceilings, the streets of Paris simmered with indignation. Bread riots, pamphleteering, clandestine meetings, and cafes all formed the symphony of an awakening populace. But beneath the headlines and manifestos, beneath the cries of liberté, égalité, fraternité, there lay a quieter revolution, one written on the bodies of women. Because while men spoke of rights in parliaments, women remembered inspections. They remembered the fines, the notes taken in market stalls, the sly smirks behind ledgers. They remembered being told that their very shape was suspicious. that their presence could be measured, monetized, and still made shameful. And so, as the Bastille crumbled and heads rolled, many local records of the Modesty tariff quietly disappeared, burned, buried, or rebranded. Inspectors vanished into anonymity. Towns denied the tax had ever existed. It had been a misunderstanding, they said. A local oddity, a rogue decree, nothing official, but the bodies remembered. In post-revolutionary France, the idea of taxing breasts became a historical embarrassment mentioned only in satire or scandal. New bureaucracies emerged, declaring themselves more enlightened, more rational, more scientific. Yet strangely, the scrutiny did not cease, it merely changed form. Now, instead of ledgers, there were dress codes. Instead of fines, there were moral ratings. The female body, once taxed for being visible, was now shamed for being insufficiently invisible. In schools and courtrooms and factories, the question remained, what does your body mean to the state? And what happens when it doesn't conform? Even outside France, the legacy lingered. Victorian England institutionalized modesty police within workhouses and boarding schools. American cities enacted public decency laws that fined women for bathing suits deemed too anatomically confident. Across the world, systems arose to patrol breasts not for revenue, but for respectability. And if respectability failed, punishment returned. It is tempting to draw a neat line from past to present, to say we have progressed, that we no longer fine anatomy, that a breast is just a breast. But look again. Marketing algorithms track cleavage for ad targeting. Dress codes in public schools disproportionately target girls' tops over boys' behavior. Sometimes social media platforms flag nipples with more precision than hate speech, and medical care, especially breast-related, remains unevenly distributed, racialized, and underfunded. In some places, women still pay more for bras, taxed as luxury goods. In others, access to breast reconstruction after cancer depends on employment status. Insurance companies debate whether breastfeeding in public counts as exposure. And in some states, lawmakers still try to regulate whether a woman can be topless on a hot day. So no, the tax is not gone. It simply shed its uniform and put on makeup. It smiles now, says it's protecting the children, says it's promoting decency, says it's just doing its job. But the logic is the same. The female body is a surface, and the state still wants rent. Thank you for watching Banned Truths. If you found this story surprising or disturbingly familiar, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Because history doesn't repeat itself. It evolves. And sometimes it doesn't even bother changing clothes.